Welcome to the TNT podcast, where we dive into the stories of career trailblazers and learn about their trials and triumphs along the way. I'm your host, Drew Hantla, and today we have Dawson Wagner, a multimedia journalist based out of Manhattan, Kansas. On today's show, Dawson details the modern nature of journalism and how he's able to reach a younger audience through a variety of platforms. He explains the need for a fresh take on the traditional 6 p.m. news outlet and how you can take advantage of the changing market. Dawson takes us on a journey through his career development and outlines why he is pursuing freelance media over the molded route of traditional news. He dives into how to position yourself into the community to stay on top of the latest events and grow your name to reach more opportunities and a larger audience. Follow along to hear more from Dawson. We hope you'll enjoy. Dawson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Drew. Appreciate it.
Give us a quick rundown. Who's Dawson Wagner?
Lifelong friend of yours, I would say, but I'm currently an assistant chief operator for the oldest continuously running college FM station in the nation, Wildcat 91.9 FM at Kansas State University. And I train a lot of students on how to do audio, how to create podcasts, what's it like to put together a specialty show, how to do, DJing, things like that. But really, it's creating content and doing things for the radio station, and as well as completing my master's in a master's of science in mass communications, and really figuring out how communications works, what's communication theory is like, and currently freelancing on the side a little bit, doing some drone cinematography here and there, as well as taking care of my dog and living with my girlfriend right now.
Taking us back to the beginning, and you don't have to go super far back, but kind of what really inspired this first step, if you will, and kind of talk us through the steps that kind of came after that.
I really got involved with the radio station back at the beginning of 2021, going into 2022, and that was just in the role of news director. I wanted to try out my storytelling, doing more audio stories and instead of video stories, or also taking my video stories and turning them into audio stories, because I found that I could make money that way. I couldn't make money doing the video yet because Channel 8 News on campus at K-State allows students to enroll in a class and really go through a program and have a show that you do every Thursday. Doesn't pay, it's just a class that you enroll in, and you're able to get the experience of reporting and putting together stories and telling stories about the local community. But it doesn't, it sets you up to learn about what the broadcasting field is like in TV news. But if I wanted to, try and make a certain amount to maintain, livelihood and be able to support my girlfriend, my dog, I needed to make some sort of income. And so that's where I started looking more towards radio, and Wildcat 91.9 kind of provided that support through starting as news director and then working my way up to program director, where I was then overseeing more of the programming of the whole station instead of just the news. I was overseeing sports. I was helping out with the specialty shows on the weekends, and being able to kind of provide a crutch for people to learn audio, figure it out. I wasn't necessarily teaching audio as much. I was more so just kind of helping people out here and there and making my own content still. That's when I started my own podcast called The Sands of Time. And that's when it was I don't do it anymore. I thought about bringing it back, honestly, but it's about the past, present, and future of any topic. And so that's how I kind of started interviewing a lot of different people around K-State, some of my old friends and some of my family members. My brother was my first interview on there that I did about photography and the history of photography, and then where it is now and where it might be going in the future. So it was the past, present, and future of really any topic that I would dive into. And then once I kind of figured out, what I wanted to do with my podcasting, I started focusing more on just helping others with news stories and providing an avenue for creating different types of content and reporting locally, kind of teaching people how to report and put together an audio piece with interviews and piecing that together in, a minute 30 to 2 minute story that then we're able to not only put out on the air, but then submit for awards. And so when it came to submitting awards, that's really where Wildcat 91.9, K-State, shines compared to a lot of other universities because of not only the amount of people that we have submitting for awards, but just our tradition of submitting so many that we have won in this last year. We won about 45 we got nominated for, and won in second, third place, and then 16 of 30 first place awards, which was really cool at the state level. So that was the Kansas Association of Broadcasters that we submitted those for. And that really was something that I personally was like working really hard towards and trying to make sure a lot of people were on the same page about and submitting and wanting to represent at the state level. And then the big thing last year that we submitted for was the intercollegiate broadcasting system, which is competition between all of the D1 university schools from Auburn to Michigan State, Kansas State, that are going up against each other for the best radio station in the nation. And we ended up winning first place for that, which was crazy. It was honestly the first time that we'd ever won first place for over 10,000 students at a university. And it really just goes to show like the amount of programming and the people that we had involved at that time last year kind of set us up for that success and to be able to represent the station. And so that was something I really, as news director, then programming director, really set me up to have that, that drive. And honestly is what then helped me then apply and want to be assistant chief operator, because I wanted to try and continue the success. So we're currently back in that grind season right now and are going to be submitting for the intercollegiate broadcasting system again we're going to go up against all the other colleges this year and see if we can do it again. I don't know. We'll see.
Just to kind of help detail that a little more in your role, what was kind of the nitty gritty of your involvement in these programs? And did it kind of follow a consistent path? Or do you feel like when you were at this stage, you were focusing here and then kind of jumping back and forth? Just detail wise, kind of where did you sit in a lot of that?
Yeah. I definitely, at the time, I didn't feel like there was any consistency at all. I felt like I was all over the place, like doing this story and then doing this story. Oh, and then I'll do a podcast here, and then I'll do a podcast here, and I'll hop up my other friend here. And like, there was just so many different facets of like just trying to do as many audio pieces as possible. One of my favorite ones that I won for as a personal intercollegiate broadcasting system award for the national awards was the best news feature story, and that was over a Ukrainian student here at K-State who was talking about his experience of his mom being in Kyiv and kind of going through the emotions of what that's like. And so he was able to really talk about how he wants to help the agriculture industry and the rebuilding that it's going to take after all this is over. And so that was one of those stories that kind of hit home to me and reaffirmed, this is why I do this. This is why I choose to interview people and have really difficult discussions to help share their story and broadcast it on the national level. I was very thankful to bring home an award for that. And it definitely wasn't in my mind when I was actually doing the story, because originally it was for a podcast. And it was just a long form, an hour-long interview that I did with him. And then I took that and then cut it up and was able to make it into a minute 30 to 2 minute feature story. Yeah, it was cool to kind of utilize that in a different way and show people as well, like, hey, this is possible. Like, this is kind of the form that you can use to then be able to create your own content. And so that's currently what I'm doing kind of as my role as assistant chief operator, is showing a lot of the students who we have in the broadcasting degree who are undergraduates how to put together, an audio story in this form. That's more the news side of things. I've been experimenting though with like a documentary that I helped with this past actually it was 2 years ago. And it was as I was getting involved with the station. It's called The Empty Bread Basket, and it was about food deserts in Kansas. And really highlighted Dollar Generals, Family Dollar, Dollar Trees that are going into small towns in Kansas and pushing out the local grocery stores. And it's happening at a lot of different small towns that, we're not as aware of. A lot of the story, a lot of the documentary focused on that specific angle was, hey, there's a lot of different instances of this going on. Let's interview the people in those towns and kind of see their take and hear about how they sometimes will have a grocery store still with a Dollar General and they're competing. And how is that happening? How do they keep up with a big corporate, store such as Dollar General? So that was a really intriguing documentary that I was able to be one of the lead editors on. That we took a lot of the footage. I didn't do as much shooting of the footage in the interviews because all that was done beforehand, and so I did more so the piecing together in Adobe Premiere Pro. It really shaped my experience as an editor and wanting to work as someone who would do editing and longer form storytelling. And so I still have this ongoing battle in my head of, do I do news and, the grind of, short stories, or do I go more long form and really engage in podcasting and documentary storytelling? And so I don't know. I still don't know to this day which one I want to do, because I'm still currently actively engaging in both, which is ultimately what a lot of this has come back to, is like, I'm a multitasker at just at heart. I like flying drones. I do drone cinematography, and then I'll also be on the ground getting the video and piecing together with the interviews, and then chopping that up for a news story, and then making it even smaller for like a social media, bite-sized video, and putting that out pretty immediately. Because as much as I want to be like, oh yeah, they'll hear it on the radio, they'll hear it here, it's like, no, it's not everybody's going to listen to the radio. Not everybody's going to watch the TV broadcast at 5 and 6 p.m. at night, especially our generation. So meet them where they're at. Go to social media, engage on posting on the stories, and then being able to link it back to your website, and being able to post it on your feed for Instagram. I don't know. I'm curious to see where it goes with, digital media as a whole. And that's why I partly am doing my master's, so I can kind of dive into the theory and the ways that, we've evolved to this point where we utilize social media for not only personal interactions, but it's where we get our news. It's where we get our information from. So I don't know. I don't know where it'll take me, but I'm interested in see where it's going.
How are you getting on these opportunities?
The opportunities, I guess, in revolving to the radio station really started with enrolling in the classes at K-State, and then being able to learn from the people that were in the positions that I'm in now. And so that's more of like the bureaucracy of higher education, I guess. That like, that's what the process you got to go through: enroll in the class, become involved in the station that way, and then work your way up through that system. But for the more of the networking and like more of the interviews, it's really just like reaching out and saying, hey, I'm part of K-State Wildcat 91.9. You have no reason to trust me or to talk to me, but I hope you do. I hope you give me a chance to come and interview you. And that's honestly most of the interviews that I've had, is just this: just go out on a limb, hope that they, agree, and then I'll be able to go and get some good audio and piece that together. And so that's really where it starts, is just building up that courage to ask. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of students get to the point where like they learn Audition, which is the Adobe Audition, the editing software, and then they learn how they can work the cameras and the audio recording devices, and then it's the reaching out and the actual interviewing and the asking the people and putting yourself out there. And maybe that's just where I am so like extroverted in so many ways by, my experience in high school of doing theater and choir and like running and trying to put myself in so many different like weird activities that that would engage me with other people, that it helped me break out of my shell before I got to this point of interviewing people, to where I'm able to ask them without feeling like I'm, going to take away their time and they're not going to like it. A lot of people want to talk. A lot of people want to talk about themselves. And so that's one thing that I've learned, is just like allowing that space and allowing that time for someone to be able to share. and not just doing it to get a soundbite in one little thing, and then that's done. Okay, interview's over. It's like, no, no, no. Just let them expand. Let them go and go in any direction that you want. And so that's something that it took time and training though, and not reacting to what they're saying as well. So like I'd set up the camera, record, and then each time they'd say something, like the beginner journalists and reporters would be like, mm-hmm, oh, yeah. It's like, no, do not say yeah, because then that's gonna go in the background of your audio, and then that's gonna make it harder for you when you're editing out, and it's gonna go over the interview. And so it's like you got to master the art of the head nod, and it's like being able to respond with your head instead of your mouth, and like in the interviews, and having them continue and give that context to whatever story it is that you're trying to capture. Then that's really the difficult part that a lot of people don't realize, at first, after getting the interview, and having that courage to reach out. And so it definitely takes practice, and it takes knowing people over the course of time. And so now I've been in Manhattan for almost 7 years now, and there are so many people I will see around, especially when walking my dog. I'll be like, oh, there's Dennis Cook, the president of the Aggieville Business Association, just walking through Aggieville. How you doing, Dennis? Like, I interviewed you 3 weeks ago because you needed to tell me about what was happening with the new construction happening in Aggieville, with Midtown Aggieville.
Do you feel like the best way then to learn and to get there is through experiences, or are there things kind of before now or even along the way that helped teach these lessons?
I mean, first it started with having an open mind. Being a multimedia journalist really takes understanding a lot of different subjects that I am not even close to being a professional in, but being able to have an open enough of a mind and accepting of whatever it is, to put myself in the shoes of that person and that individual that I might be talking to. Now, some of the experiences that I gained was from an internship that I did at KSN News in Wichita. And that was in the summer of 2021, that I was able to take away a lot of the experiences of what the day-to-day grind is really like, for a news reporter and someone who would want to be a multimedia journalist like myself. Through that, it was really a lot of just shadowing at first, and shadowing multimedia journalists, weather woman, weatherman, sports journalist, sports director, really going through the motions of putting together a news broadcast, being able to go out into the community and capture a fire that happened at a house, and reporting on why the fire might have happened, and then bringing that story back, and talking about it on the air at 5 and 6 p.m. I mean, I didn't talk about it, but the reporter did, that I shadowed and went along with. But it was those experiences and the relationship that I kind of made, and the connections that I had at that internship, that set me up to not only learn about the industry, but be able to potentially use those relationships later on. Like, I've now met people that also knew those people, and now it's really cool. It's that we can relate on knowing that person and being able to have that similarity. And really, it's finding those similarities among not only people who you work with, but also the people that you interview and that you're able to come across on your day to day. And so it was that experience of trying out, the different ways of telling stories, and learning how to put together the news broadcasts, and trying out the weather myself, and editing together, practice stories. Ultimately, it was that experience of getting to try out the gear, and learn, from some of the people who actually do it as their job. Do I want to make this my full-time gig? Do I want to get the news every single day in this form, 9 to 5 p.m., and tell a story that's new every single day, and pitch 3 stories every single morning? No, I ultimately was like, no, I actually don't. I don't know. As much as I love the experience and I spoke, so highly of all those people, and I still think they're great individuals that taught me so much. But it really, really showed me that, that form of journalism and grinding for the story every day and putting it together and getting it ready for the 5 and 6 p.m. news that only the older generation pretty much watches now. Our generation doesn't watch 5 and 6 p.m. local news. So why am I doing this? Am I doing it to create content then for social media and then putting it out there and linking to websites? I can do that at the university. I can do that part of the radio station at Wildcat 91.9. I don't need to have the 5 and 6 p.m. news and then the grind of every single day making a story. And so that's where I really had this, cognitive dissonance in my head where I was like, one side was telling me, yeah, no, just dive in, go for it. You'll adapt, you'll try and make it work. And then another part of me was like, no, you have a girlfriend, you have a dog, you have a life in Manhattan that you should really weigh your options and figure out what direction you want to go in. And my girlfriend was deciding to go to grad school, and so ultimately I was thinking, maybe I should do grad school. Maybe I should finish up my minor in unmanned aircraft systems, get my remote pilot's license, and try and freelance as I maybe start a graduate teaching assistantship and get my master's. And so that's ultimately the path that I chose. I was like, you know what? I'm not throwing myself into that vicious news cycle because, well, I just don't think that'd be healthy. I don't think my mental health would would fare that well. So ultimately, I'm glad that I made the decision I did, and that I'm in the position I am today with being able to teach a lot of people about my experiences and kind of sharing how I got to where I am and how they can potentially do the same thing just in a different way with whatever passion that they might have.
Where do you see, in your current perspective, where do you see kind of that media and journalism direction heading? Can you kind of break that down for us?
Oh boy, you're opening up a can of worms, Drew. I don't know if you want. All right. So I currently have written on my wall here. So I have two papers that I put 7 issues that society faces and 7 mass medias and the rising eighth. And the 7 issues society faces that I kind of summarized was climate change, immigration, racial and ethnic and gender disparities, debt from healthcare, student loans, rent, car, religiosity and politics, AI, machine learning, and then number 7, communication, which underlies all those things. And then the 7 mass medias: newspapers, magazines, radio, television, the internet, digital media, and then now social media, and the rising eighth, which is augmented and virtual reality. And so that's really where I am trying to understand how these new devices like Apple Vision Pro and Meta's Ray-Bans that they have with the cameras, as well as their headsets that they have already created, the Quests, that they've been able to create some really cool augmented apps that you're able to download and utilize. But the people aren't really consuming news on that, though. It's like not you don't put on the headset and do that. But will people maybe eventually consume the way that they like sit down for the 5 and 6 p.m. news and watch TV that way? you know Maybe, but I feel like people aren't going to want to put on a clunky headset on their face and consume whatever thing they want to consume. They want to have it at ease. So these, like, ultimately your iPhone or Samsung or whatever type of smartphone that you have, may just be adapted in a different way, to have some sort of applications. I think the crux of it is applications. That's not going away. We're gonna have to use some sort of application to download or to use at some point, to be able to access the information that we want to hear, what we want to learn. And so from all these different things, from the issues society faces to the mass medias, it all comes back to that thing is the application. So what is that application? What is that going to be? An implementation of this augmented and virtual reality, mainly augmented reality, which I could see being, like where I could easily just have a lens or something flip down, and then I could pull up, something that involves whatever news from the application that's connected to the blockchain, that then has a distribution among other people that then have fact checked that source as well, and been able to prove that, hey, this is a real video. This isn't an AI that generated it, because we can prove it from this metadata that is connected to the blockchain that we're all trusting here. What's the application though that gets put on that? Your guess is good as mine.
On that note, in regards to the direction of where this media is heading, do you feel like journalism and kind of media content as a role in society is going to have a potential to grow, or do you feel like it'll kind of contract as we kind of have more of these like maybe verified sources? Where do you see it going in regards to the availability for somebody to get involved in the future?
I would say more availability for independent journalists and for people who are just wanting to try and share a story that someone else did, or maybe they have something that they put together. But the issue is the foundation of journalism, and how a story is put together and how it's edited together in some sort of software like Adobe Premiere Pro. That is a skill that has to be honed and trained, and you can't just like repost all the time and have, well, you can. I mean, there are independent journalists out there. There's one guy, someone could look him up, Mario Nafal, who's on Twitter, and he posts every day different stories from around the world, but it's mainly national news, and some of it is clickbait, and some of it is not trusted, and a lot of it gets community noted as well. And so, but that's why I personally really enjoy using Twitter X, as something that is able to vet out information and figure out the actual truth in the story, and verifying it from different sides, and seeing who has what to share with what video from what angle, and that's ultimately how then piecing all that together and then sharing that in a way that's verified is what the purpose of a journalist, and where journalists really like lies, and why that isn't going away. That can't go away, because you need someone to help understand these issues.
Where do you see you going from here?
Within the next year, I hope to build up my freelancing company, Wagoner Media. Um, I've got about 3 to 4 different gigs so far this semester, on top of all the grading and all the writing of the papers and all the assistant chief operating of the radio station that I've had to do. So that's a plus. It's on the weekends when I can occasionally get out and get some video for a real estate company, and then be able to send it to them, and get $150 for 2 hours to an hour of flying. And so that's something I hope to continue to build and do personally. As what I want to do in regards to finishing up my master's degree, I mean, part of why I started my master's is to understand marketing and advertising more, because I feel as if I've got a good pulse on the news industry and where things are headed with that. I don't have as good of a pulse on the advertising industry and marketing, and that is entwined in all this. That's what's so crazy. The more that I look at it, the more that I've tried to understand the platforms and the applications that you spread news on. There's advertising right next to it. There's advertising along with it. In fact, the companies that get critiqued for having a bias, for having journalists do certain things and report on certain things and say certain things about companies, because the companies are advertising on their channel, is a valid critique, is something that's very valid in criticizing the current industry and the layout, because a lot of pharmaceutical companies advertise on big news stations that then have to kind of curtail their reporting to not maybe expose as much of the pharmaceutical practices in certain ways, and the things that they distribute and say about the certain medicine that they might be trying to sell to the public. That's a big aspect of this that I am undertaking as well with my master's degree, and wanting to understand, where can I fit into the marketing and advertising industry. I have so many skills as a videographer and drone cinematographer that maybe I could work for a marketing firm, advertising firm, and kind of just maybe work my way up that way, instead of trying to critique it all and figure out the future of the platforms, because that's the crazy undertaking that I don't know if I want to like throw myself into, because I don't know, what the future job application of that is like, because I can I can freelance as much as I want, but like ultimately I'm going to have to create my own self-sustaining, business through Wagonair Media if I do want to pursue that more criticism of the current news industry and the current advertising industry. And
As you're in this world, what's kind of the biggest piece of advice you'd have for somebody?
yeah, multimedia is just so many things, wrapped into it. It's like understanding how to write, how to piece together a video, how to create an audio piece, how to, post on social media and get engagement, and then how to put together a campaign or a documentary. Or it is pretty wild that like we've had to, in a way, as journalists, kind of adapt to so many different things that it's forced us to learn all the skills. So if I had to really, give advice, is saying be so open-minded that you will say yes to as many things as possible without hopefully overwhelming yourself. Don't overwhelm yourself and become a yes man. I unfortunately have become a yes man in a lot of instances, and it's my biggest critique that I get from my girlfriend and my family, is that I say yes a lot. Really, it's just be malleable. Be malleable, be adjustable. Being able to work on the fly is important, but also don't force yourself into something and fitting a mold. Like a news reporter in a specific way at a broadcasting station of whatever sort. There's a lot of pressure to do that, especially when going into higher education and pursuing news and broadcasting. There's going to be pressure to fit the mold of a specific type of reporter, or someone who does a specific type of thing at a news or TV station. But if you can learn all the different aspects of what they do at the news and TV station, and you can learn how to create all these different videos, photos, audios, that really allows you to have more, I would say it allows you to take more control of what you want to do with your life. And don't feel like just because you have a certain bias in one way or the other, whatever your belief might be of a subject, that you have to stick with that one thing. Don't become dogmatic about it. Be very open-minded and value those relationships that you make along the way while you do it.
And sticking with those relationships or just kind of knowledge that you've presented, do you feel like there is a person that really helped you kind of come to where you're at now, or a book or a podcast? What's kind of, again, one big source someone can take away to kind of go and maybe learn a little bit more?
I learned from a guy named Andrew Smith, who is currently an associate professor. He's working to become a full professor right now, getting his degree. And that experience I gained under him at Channel 8 News is honestly why I am here today, because I wouldn't have learned how to tell stories in the way that I tell them. I wouldn't have won the 7+ first place awards I won last year at the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, from podcasting to best news story and audio, best news story and video, best episodic programming for the K-State Today, which is a weekly email that goes out. And I basically did a podcast summarizing 3 events every week for that. And it was a lot of those different experiences under him and building up that confidence in my storytelling as a journalist that I wouldn't have been able to do. And so it was from the professors, Andrew Smith, Ian Punnett, and Nick Homburg. He was my drone professor. He really got me into the drone minor, and I was able to learn about, I flew hundreds of hours of drones under him, and it's why I pursued the route I did. And it's why I own this little thing today. My Mavic Mini 3 Pro allows me to make, a good amount. And I probably made like over half of this back. So this was like $900, and it was probably like half of it that I paid off now, just with the things that I've done for little gigs. And so it's a nice little facet on top of the whole broadcasting industry, but it's also fun because I can overlap them with my storytelling, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for those main 3 professors who really taught me a lot at K-State. And that's why I value, higher education so much, for giving me that experience and forming those relationships. And it wasn't, if it wasn't for me applying to K-State and just trying to get in, then I wouldn't have had those things. And yeah, it was uncomfortable along the way, and it took a lot of change and progression and my attitude towards things. But ultimately, just having an open mind and accepting and learning, being a lifelong learner, that's really what I am, and what I hope everybody else aims to be too.
You have like some socials you can provide for people to reach out to you, or websites to kind of find your products, or again, just to reach out to you and kind of ask more?
Yeah. So you can follow me at Dawson Wagonair. So that's DAWSON WAGNAIR. That's where I post all my drone content. Yeah. So Wagonair Media is where I put everything, where, I had all my podcasts for the Sands of Time on there, where I did a lot of interviews. That's lower down on my feed. If you go to that, you'll also see the podcast that I'm currently a part of, The Space Between. Can be found at spacebetween.com. And we talk about all astronomy things on there, the cosmos, really interviewing a lot of interesting characters that have done a lot of studying about dark matter, dark energy. What are the mysteries of quantum physics, and trying to understand a lot of the questions we have out there. But there's a lot of cool things that currently in the process of works on, but follow me at Dawson Wagonair on all platforms. And you can kind of keep up to speed with what I've been working on and what I plan to work on in the future.
Dawson, thanks again, man, for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been great, Drew. Appreciate the time.
If you enjoyed today's episodes, then feel free to explore the rest of our offerings with the Brothers Frontier Studio. If you're not already, you can follow us at Brothers Frontier on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. With new shows every week and daily content on our socials, we hope you'll find what you're looking for. If you haven't already, please leave us your feedback with a comment or rating to let us know what you thought of today's episode. Thanks for listening. We hope to catch you on our next episode of the TNT Podcast. I'll see you guys later.